Welcome to the Wilmington Entrepreneur Podcast, where we sit down with the best to learn about building, growing, maintaining, and mastering business and life.
Man, your office is on the beach. What are you talking about?
Hey, the location is awesome.
You can step out and like take what, like a quarter mile from the sand? You're crazy, man.
You're right about that. I got it pretty good. I get to walk the loop every morning.
Oh my gosh, I want to talk about that. So Clay, thank you for joining us for the third official Wilmington Entrepreneur Podcast. So pumped to have you here. This is Clay Boroughs. He is the owner of Coastline Capital. He is a mortgage lender here. Got in the mortgage business back in 2015. Started up his own brokerage in 2021, and it's just been an impressive individual. I bumped into him and got to know him through playing basketball, actually. So we're both big sports fans. I'm sure we'll touch on that sure. But excited to have you on, especially as a business owner, a leader in the community. I know you're going to have a bunch to say, and just pumped to have you here, man.
Dude, thank you. And fellow App State grads.
That's right. Hey, go Mountaineers.
That's right. Dude,
how did I almost forget that?
Dude, I mean, it's just time flies. And like you said, we met playing basketball, so we had that in common. And that's really before we even know what we did for work. We were out there, competing.
Dude, I just realized, I mean, we were playing basketball long before we actually knew who each other were.
100%.
So Clay and I played at the SRC in the Student Rec Center up at App State, and we played basketball, pickup basketball together after school. I mean, man, I was playing so much basketball back then. It was insane.
We're still playing a good bit now.
I guess I am playing a good bit now.
Definitely you just feel it longer.
But, oh, my gosh, dude.
The recovery's
That's
tough.
the truth. Yeah, my body ain't like it used to be, but...
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sure we're gonna chat about sports and basketball and stuff because it influences your character so much. But today is about you, kind of your story, and this podcast is to frame it is to teach any entrepreneur. I mean, the stuff we're going to try to focus on is just kind of mindset, building a business, stuff that has helped you in your career and development. So really, I just kind of want to start, like, take us back to the very beginning.
Yep.
What was your first ever job?
Man, first ever job where I was employed by someone else was I worked at a skating rink for my high school career. I had to get my worker's permit when I was 15.
Yeah,
and,
I remember,
Mom dropped me off at work and I was blowing my whistle at the 12-year-old skating too fast. So that was my first real job. But I was in middle school selling, those hemp bracelets that you would weave, and I'd sell them for $2 or $3 each, and come home with $20 and show mom, and that was that first real job that I ever can remember making money doing. But then, going to the rollabout and doing all that and being a skating rink superintendent, let's call it.
Wow, skate rink superintendent. I love that. That's so fun. I don't think I've ever met someone who's worked at a skating rink.
Oh my God.
I went to the one here for the first time. I mean, it's been like a decade, but I can't skate anymore, dude. Do you still have it? Can you still stay up on those?
It's probably like riding a bike for me at this point because I did it so many times. But you're a boy with a couple of skates on, could do some pretty cool tricks.
Dude, I love. Well, that's where all your balance, I guess.
The footwork, maybe.
That's awesome, man. So
that
first job, but then you were also obviously started to show some entrepreneurial spirit, doing some. So what got you into like doing bracelets and stuff? Have you always dabbled in that?
Dude, I mean, it's just really was just learning different things and just taking different things and figuring out a way to make some money doing it. Growing up. I grew up in a middle-class family, and mom and dad worked the whole time growing up, and, just set a really good example of what having a job looks like, and, learned those responsibilities young, and, from the time I was 15 till, now I can't remember of a month period where I didn't have a job. So, I think that gets lost a lot today, and, the way that the society is now is people lose respect for, jobs and employment and how important they are for people's character and, how much growth comes along with just, having some responsibility.
Absolutely. 100%. You hit the nail on the head there. I mean, we got to stay productive. You got to stay producing. When would you say that your first I don't know, your entrepreneurial opportunity came? I mean, you know, even if it's back then, you know, what would you say was like the first time you were like, man, I really started something I'm proud of and got kind of the ball rolling on something like that?
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, I feel like entrepreneurship's always been something that I wanted to do, work for myself, figure out how to way to make it and do it in my own way. You know, obviously it takes a significant amount of capital to be able to make a venture like I have, you know, done recently. But even back in the day, you know, I worked at camps and where we organized groups of people. So I've always been good with groups and being a team leader. And, you know, some of those qualities, I think, trickle down in the entrepreneurship realm, you know, that you learn when you work for other organizations. And, you know, when the time comes for you to make that leap in your own journey and your own, you know, entrepreneurship, you know, venture, then, you know, having those qualities definitely come into play. So, I mean, you know, just from working in it with groups and, you know, in the jobs that I have in the corporate world, I feel like the skill sets kind of took me into this journey. And, you know, I finally realized what it was a few years back, you know, after I had learned and, you know, gone through that transition.
Yeah. When did you say, so 2015 is getting further and further back each year, which is crazy. It seemed like it was just a few years ago, and then now it's like, what, 8 years, 7 years?
Almost a decade. It's crazy.
That's insane. But what got you into the mortgage world specifically? Take me through that.
So, you know, coming out of college, I couldn't even spell mortgage. Maybe you know, you gotta remember there's an R and a T. You know, and so I applied for 3 different jobs, 2 in logistics and then 1 in mortgage. And mortgage was the only one that was full commission after 6 months of training. And, you know, they told me what the top producers were making and what the bottom producers were making. And, you know,
I was like,
you know, betting on myself a lot during life already, coming out of college, I really didn't have, you know, a whole lot of responsibility. So I just made another bet, really. And, you know, I got fortunate that I picked it up quickly. I learned about finance. I spent long hours, you know, educating myself on financial products, what the best situation is for everybody, you know, understanding people's situation and then structuring products around their life. That, you know, it finally clicked with me that, hey, this could be a career of mine. I can impact people's life in a great way, make money alongside of them, and then also educate them on how to become wealthy and financially free. So, like, that was the point, you know, at the beginning of 2015, 2016, 2017, where I kind of figured out that, hey, this mortgage journey was going to be something more impactful, you know, once I started.
Yeah, you mentioned being kind of enticed by being commission. I'd say that most people I run into, you mentioned the word commission, and I'd say, you know, 8 out of 10 people are immediately like, whoa, that's a lot of risk. That's kind of scary. I mean, even when I tell people that I've been on, you know, full commission for 5 years, that's like the first thing I get is a lot of times I hear, I could never do that. But then, you know, I meet my entrepreneurs and they're like, well, what can I make? You know, so had you worked to commission? Have you ever worked? Were you in sales before that, or did you have an idea of what it was like to work on commission?
You know, I was never, because in college, you know, I was just working for the recreational system, and you know, whenever I got that job for the mortgage company, that wasn't for 4 months until after I graduated from, you know, college. So for that whole summer after I graduated, I went and helped my dad build houses. And that'll teach you hard labor, something real quick that'll teach you, hey, you know, I need to figure out a better solution here. And so, you know, I buckled down with the mortgage thing, and, you know, luckily it's paid off and that's gone, you know, in the right direction. But, you know, you learn all these little life lessons along the way. And, you know, but the whole commission thing is, at this point, it's like I would never work anything else but something that was going to pay me for my time, you know.
Or and pay you on your results, you know. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I have a pretty similar story. Before I got into sales, I was working a job. I was taking care of some property in Nashville for a country singer I used to work for out there, and I just did a lot of really difficult manual labor, like landscaping, building. I built a wall that was like 10 feet tall and about, I kid you not, probably a quarter of a mile long out of railroad ties, 200-pound railroad ties.
Oh my gosh.
Soaked with creosote. Arms were just like rashed all the way up. Had to wear steel-toe boots every day. Showed up at the job site like 7 a.m. Was like stacking railroad ties. It was brutal. But it was about, and that project lasted about 4 months. And I remember at the end of that project saying, I never, ever, if I don't have to, I'd never want to have to make another dollar working with my hands only. Because at that time, I mean, I was 24, 25, and I was good at it. Strong body. I could move stuff around. I had a good sense of working hard like you probably did too. But the perspective that I gained at the end of that, where I was like, man, I want to be able to make an impact or make money using my people skills or just
information that I can provide and value that doesn't necessarily come from picking up, a lot of material or whatever.
And when these hands are worn out and this body's getting a little slower.
Which more power to those people that do that on a daily, because we need those,
we need it
in the economy and everything. But it's something that, it's, a lot of people are adverse to, the commission thought and versus the fixed salary and everything. And it isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing that I've learned too. It's not for everybody,
When you started in the mortgage world and you kind of started transitioning into commission, did you have any key mentors or coaching that helped you kind of make that transition? Because that can be brutal and devastating for a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people that start commission jobs and fail pretty quickly. What was your kind of support system like there?
It's mentally draining to go, from something where you feel supported to fully commission, your control, your effort controls your paycheck. And it's hugely important to have support. And so I was fortunate enough in my first commission role to sit between two top producers at the time for that same company. They said, hey, we recognize that you're a younger guy with talent. We're going to put you here with these two older guys that know what they're doing. You can learn a lot from. And that was the best thing they could do for me, because I just gained experience at 3 times the rate. Because, we all learn through experience. So I was not only having my experience with my clients, but I was hearing their experience with their clients. So, just the whole learn it at a quicker speed, and also the fact that YouTube and these other platforms like Google, information is at the tip of your fingertips. So if anybody wants to learn anything, it's not very hard to find.
Absolutely. I've been saying that now for the last couple of years. I feel like, especially as a salesperson, I feel like there used to be this emphasis on we are the source of the information, and instead of we interpret and convey the information and build relationships and adapt what that means to them and help people get to their goals. But there's so many people that I feel like are salespeople that I feel like are unsuccessful that still kind of gatekeep and feel like you have to come to me to get that info. But I think that's a very fundamental shift, is that all the info is there. It's been there for a while since the internet. It's all accessible.
And that's just like the controllable things that people can do. You can control your effort, and you can control your attitude, and you can control your execution in some levels. But there's way to sharpen the saw with the execution piece to get better at it. And so, especially with sales, that was a big thing that's harped on is, you control your controllables, and then you get better at what you can control.
Can you remember back to starting out in your sales career, transition out at you're building houses all summer, working like a dog, and then someone hands you a phone book and says, hey, find some deals. Like, what was that first 6 months or 3 months where give me a look into just the panic mode that was happening.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea what I was talking about probably to these first people, but they said, hey, here's 300 leads a day. And they said, I want you to call them. And so I'd call 300 leads a day, and
that's a lot of calling.
And so, I'd make that was our goal, 300 dials and or 4 or 5 mortgage applications. And so, it was that kind of system that I had walked into, and that was a lot of pressure and a lot of, and so, out of the 25 people that I went into that job with, there's probably only 2 left in the industry. So, that immediately will weed out a lot of people. So, they figured out who had a tolerance for it, who didn't, and then, as they trained me, they have worked on execution, because once they realized the effort's there, but that's what I had to do for the first 6 months. I was there 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. making calls and trying to talk to people about their finances on a $300,000 to $500,000 transaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
what do you think if someone was going to be getting into the mortgage business, or really any sales, full commission job, and let's just assume that that's kind of local to their area? What bit of advice would you give Clay in 2015 when he just started out? What would you tell him?
I would just say that the 3 controllables, like I mentioned earlier: attitude, effort, execution. Be mindful of those, and then I would also say, accelerate your growth as quick as possible by the use of information like podcasts, like books, like reading news articles, current events, those kind of things will, take your value up higher at a more exponential rate than you just going to work 9 to 5 and letting it come to you. So if you can develop a good routine, read good books, good input equals good output. So that's what I would tell the younger generation.
You got some zingers, attitude, effort, execution. Is that what you said? Your input. This is all I can tell this is part of your rhetoric.
It's been ingrained in me. So I was fortunate to go through all of it as a young kid, and now I get to kind of deliver the info to my peers. It's so fun.
That is fun. Fun's a huge part of it. Especially for me. I mean, I get a lot of fun, especially when things are good and I'm producing well and stuff like that. But then there's also, the inverse when things are not so fun. I tell anyone that is getting into sales, it can be some high highs and low lows from time to time. I mean, how was that? Transition to and I'd like to talk about specifically from maybe a budget and mindset standpoint. What was it like to have your money go from I'm getting a W-2 paycheck every week and I know when it's coming, know it's a deposit, I'm planning my bills around it, to now you only get paid if you kill what you eat, what you kill. What was that like to make that transit budget wise?
Dude, I mean, it's in sales, it's so up and down as you can imagine. So me coming from the type of family that I came to, where money was a little bit tighter. I got taught at a young age how to budget. And that's a big problem that I don't think a lot of younger people do today. Is they know how to budget their money or know where to spend it or where to invest it. So that was obviously a big roller coaster, because some months you can make X amount, and then some days you might not make anything one month. So it's a big part of teaching people how to save, people how to budget, and people how to invest. My mom's favorite saying was, no debt is better than low debt. So, not going out there and financing 4 new cars, getting, 3 new jewelry loans, so not spending money where, it's not needed and it's not being invested. And so, that was a big thing that you learn as you kind of get a little bit older, is, hey, where's my money going to last the longest? And, where's my money going to go to give me some kind of return that benefits my life in a material way?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and you're touching on the, assets and liabilities, which, if you haven't read this book, I'm sure, and I know you have, but Robert Kiyosaki's, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just read that book. If you're listening, you need to read that book. If you want just a fundamental understanding of money, that completely changed my life. And I honestly, I didn't scrutinize finance or my money really until I got into sales, because at first it was just, hey, I'm getting paid to kind of be here. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to show up and I'm going to work, because I just have that. That's just naturally who I am. Because if I'm going to be at a job, I'm either going to work hard or just be bored, and I just don't like being bored. So I would never correlate my value. My value was just in my time. So it didn't matter how much I helped the company or helped move things forward. I would still get paid the same. So once I got into sales, and I think I had my first, I was selling cars. It was like my first sales job. And I remember going to my sales manager, and I had just, sold a car that had a really high kind of, it was a used vehicle. We just took it in well on trade. There was just there was a big profit margin on it, and we got paid off that. And it was the first time that my paycheck, I think I made like $1,000 off that one car. And for me, it was the most I've ever made off of like,
on a commission,
like
one unit.
One unit. I sold one car and made $1,000. I was like, it blew my mind. And I walked in there with a sales manager. He was just like, he made a big deal out of it. It was really fun. It was cool. I mean, they've done it a bunch of the times, but I just remember being like, that was literally half of my paycheck for like the whole month, if not a third of it. And I was like, I got to sell like 2 or 3 of these. I just did it in a day. Like, are you kidding me? And it just once I looked at it that way, I got hooked. I mean, I got absolutely freaking amped about it. Do you remember a moment like that happened for you? Yeah,
man, I would definitely say once you realize and you get one of the larger checks, I would say, and when you're that young, you go from, the offer and salary coming out of school was anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000, let's call it, when we were coming out. And, then you hit your first 5-digit check and you say, wow, well, that was really related to the effort and the time that I spent this past month or whenever. And then it just kind of fuels the tank for the next month. And, a lot of people get drive that way. And, you get drive from a lot of different avenues, whether it's personally, financially, spiritually, whatever it is. But yeah, man, it's definitely a good time when you can get when you cash what we call a fatty.
A fatty.
Call a fatty. That's a fatty.
I like it. I'm going to start calling my checks.
Cash a fatty. It makes it feel good.
It kind of sounds illegal. But okay, I get off track. I get excited, but go back to tell me about the like budgeting again, because I feel like that's when for me as a real estate agent, which is somewhat similar, we work in similar like industries, and we get paid similarly, I guess, but you have more transactions that you're a part of, and I get kind of paid bigger per transaction, but then I have more responsibilities on that specific negotiation. We could talk about all that, but my point is talk to me a little bit about how there's kind of rules of thumb, like a lot of agents that are getting in the business will tell them to have 6 to 9 months of expenses saved up on hand, ready to make that jump. I have never yet met an agent that has gotten into the business with 6 to 9 months to spare, unless they are doing this part time or like second career or something, retired. There's a bunch of people like that. But I'm kind of talking about like you're out of college, you're kind of getting going. What would be like some financial advice to give someone that's very interested in getting into a full commission job that might be similar to what you're doing?
Yeah, I would look for a sales organization that gives you that support in the first 6 months. If the organization that you're interviewing for hire, if they don't provide you with at least a stability to pay your rent or pay your overhead, they're really not interested in growing as a company, in my opinion, if they're just going to say you're straight sales out of the gate. So first of all, find a company that's willing to support you like that, and then also find a product or a service that you find beneficial and or interesting. If you don't find the product or service interesting or beneficial, you're just going in there for the monthly paycheck, the money will shortly not be worth it, and you will be in the same boat in 3 to 4 months. And I've seen that happen. I'm sure you have too. And so, find the support, and then also find a product or service that you're interested in. That's what I would tell them.
I love it. And just to summarize for maybe some people that aren't familiar in the sales career, and there's different words for this. A lot, some sales
and definitely,
positions.
To the budget portion, they need some money saved up too. By the time that your full commission check is rolling around with the company, that you're with, I would say if you don't have any money saved up or you don't feel comfortable going in that commission, have the conversation with your employer and say, hey, can we extend this? or take a look in the mirror and say, is this for me?
Yes, absolutely. And 100%. You have to be passionate about it. You have to, and I want to like talk a little bit about like what drives you and all that. But I just lost my train of thought. You had
I cut you off.
But a really good point there that I was like excited to talk about. But it'll come back to me. But the whole 6 down. Oh, I know. So what I tell people sometimes is see, because like if you I feel like there's people like me that you can tell me what to do and I can know that it's right, and I still will have to go mess it up. I'll have to still go learn the hard lesson, and I'm a trial by fire person. I'm not saying I intentionally make dumb mistakes, but when I was learning this career and learning a new job, like my brain could only take in so much information that I would be too scared to make a mistake that I wouldn't want to even start. Then I think something just switched where I was like, look, I'm never going to be perfect. I just need to get out there and start making stuff happen. But I always had a mentor and a fallback and a support system that could cover me in the case that I did. But to touch on the budgeting part, we say 6 to 9 months, right? I did not have that. I had like maybe sub 3, and it was a bad idea. And I've already told this story on multiple podcasts, but I will tell it. The short version is I think I saved $10,000, and my expenses each month was like $3,000 going out. And I thought $10,000 was going to cover us for because in the car business, I stepped in and I sold a car. I got paid in 2 weeks. Yeah. In the real estate business,
it takes a month and a half.
Yeah. Once you like got under contract, for the most part, maybe even longer. So it was like a longer sales cycle. So I burned through that super fast and got really, really pinned up against the wall financially. Yeah. And I had to produce. I had zero option. And what that did is basically it turned my financial thermostat up to 500 degrees out of nowhere. So basically what I'm saying is I'm not saying that you can't be successful if you don't have your money saved, but I'm saying that the less money you have saved, you got to be more prepared for that heat, because 100%. If you're going to step into it with nothing and you have to produce, that heat's going to be high, and it's either going to forge you or you're going to melt. I mean, and there's no, so it's kind of like, so for my entrepreneurs that are listening, you can do it. You absolutely can. But I would say consult someone in your industry. If you're looking to go into mortgages, call Clay. If you're looking to be a realtor, call me. If you're looking to go into any sales anywhere else, find a sales manager, someone in that industry, and just ask them, hey, what should I expect financially? Because you're right. You have to plan for that big time, because
and learn as much information as you can find on the internet. And before you go into a sales role or the job that you're interested in, go on to Google, go on to YouTube, and say, what do civil engineers need to know? What does a firefighter need to know? What does a police officer need to know? And just see what kind of information you can find. I mean,
it's out there.
That's the thing. It's right there right now. And half of the things that I learned after college were through methods like just trial and error and using the internet.
That's it. It's all out there. So, talk to me about drive a little bit, because you mentioned that a couple of times. You got to stay passionate about your product, about what it does. I remember when my first sales job ever selling cars, I already had an interest in cars. It's not like I had an interest in cars. I've always been a car person. If I was sitting at a bar chatting, I could talk about most cars for a while. I already had kind of interest in it. But then also once I started working, I remember my sales manager, shout out Bob Bomar if you're ever listening, awesome sales manager. He encouraged me, like, when downtime, just to go test drive the cars. He's like, Caleb, you don't know these things inside and out. How are you going to sell it? I think most people get into a sales career thinking that, oh, I'm good with people. I can talk with people. I'm a great customer service person, but they don't know how to move someone forward in a transaction. Like, that's asking hard questions. Also, they don't understand the product sometimes as full as the customer, and you're a salesperson. You have to sell it. What keeps you excited, or what drives you to be a good salesperson?
Dude, I mean, I think sales is something that you can definitely learn, but it's also something that, some people are born with the gift of gab as well.
They are.
But it's also a process. Whenever, whatever product or service you're selling, you got to know that, hey, which part of the process, in the sales process, is the customer in? Are they in the intro phase where they're looking for education and information? Or are they in the closing stage where they're in the decision-making mindset? So, you find the customer, you decide, what they're looking for, what they might need, how you might could provide service. You go through the ins and outs about how much relationship you need to build depending on the product and the service, provide that high quality, high value service, and by the time that the decision making comes, the customer won't have another decision to make other than use you because you've done the work on the front end. So it's all about bringing value, building a good relationship, and then making sure it's a win for everybody.
That's it, 100%.
Yeah.
But the sales manager I just mentioned, Mr. Bob Omar, used to sit down and he would tell me, because I was one that I considered myself definitely had the gift of gab. I could talk to a brick wall. Everyone says that. And it is, I take that as a compliment. Sometimes it's also like I've talked too much. I catch myself and stuff. But in a sales transaction, I used to think, hey, if I demonstrate my knowledge, if I just like demonstrate my knowledge and tell you all that I know, then I'll sell you on it, right? And I was so wrong about that. And it started out in the car world because a client would come in, they'd want to test drive a Jeep, and I was like, oh, I love Jeeps. Like, oh, this Jeep is great because of this, that has this feature and that and this, and then this motor, this transmission setup. And they were like, okay.
How many cup holders does it have?
Right. Oh my God. But and the thing is, even if I knew that question, I would realize I was just trying to prove to them that I knew something versus asking them important question. And then he pulled me aside. He said, there's an old sales adage. I think it's like a Zig Ziglar thing. It's like you sell more with your ears than you do with your mouth. 100%. And it's the truth. And then what happened is I would get flustered, and I would realize that I just wasn't doing a good job selling that customer. And then Bob would TO, he'd come in and kind of tap me on the shoulder and get in my seat, and he would sit down and be like, what are you guys trying to accomplish today? What's the goal? What are you trying to do? How are you how it was why, how, what, where questions. And I was sitting there going, how did I go an hour like with these people and never even think to ask that question? And then he pulled me aside. He said, Caleb, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yep. And it's like lid unlocked. I was like, oh my God.
I know everybody, everybody's different in what they're looking for. Yeah. And that's the thing I love about the finance industry is, someone might, look at their money or their assets or, in a certain way. Yeah. And I might look at mine in a certain way versus he might look at his in a certain way. Yeah. And they all might have value, or they might all have, a benefit. But it depends on what benefit it is to who. And, right. And that's where, kind of the rubber meets the road, per se. You find out who they are, what they like to do, and what they're about, and then you give them the option that best suits them. Might not be the best option for everybody.
Yeah. Was that did that come pretty natural to you? Did you have a similar learning curve?
Similar learning curve for sure. Especially in the mortgage world and wanting to tell everybody all I know about the numbers and the finance and how the markets are going. And, most people don't keep up with that. They really just care about, hey, how is this going to benefit me and my family, my monthly payment? How is this going to change my budget? Can I go on my vacations? Can I afford to do this investment property this year? So, man, but it is so fun to be able to be passionate about, what you're working with on people or for people. And it's just a blessing, to be honest.
I think it's one of the things I find so incredibly rewarding about being a salesperson is getting on, I call it kind of like getting on the same side of the table as people, as my clients, and looking at a problem together, kind of arm in arm, because I get to be an advocate and literally the word agent, like a fiduciary. I get to, my goal is to like put myself in their shoes and really, really go, based on my knowledge, based on my expertise, what would best serve this person? And once I kind of rewired my brain to like, I need to sell myself to them. And once I started doing that and asking those questions, I found my sales started going up like crazy, because I was truly in the trenches of those people, and I was looking at it, the way they looked at it, reacting to things, the way they reacted to it, and then also coaching and guiding them through
100%.
through stuff. So it's a huge difference. So transition a little bit. So you start out, and then let's say you get the hang of salesperson, and you're becoming a good salesperson. What were those next few years like in terms of your growth? What were maybe some checkpoints that you hit as an entrepreneur that led you towards? Because what I want to get to is I want to talk about your transition to starting a brokerage, because a lot of people get into sales and they might ride that out forever, but a few salespeople will get in and say, like, I want to start something my own. I mean, tell me about that kind of transformation there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for me, it was something growing up that I knew I really would want to work for myself in the end, when it all came said and done. So I kind of had that inclination. I just didn't know what it was going to be. So when I got into the mortgage, I found out I was going to be good at that, did well, and, started working with my second company to help build a branch for them in Charlotte. And, I was one of the first 5 employees. We grew to eventually 90 within about a year, which was crazy growth. This was during COVID too. So, it was right when the market was kind of, on the downturn in terms of rates. So they wanted my help staffing up, training sales, which was a big role. But, what I started to realize was there was some operational, inefficiencies with the company that I was working for in terms of support for the loan officers to produce. So whenever that was highlighted to me, in 2020, 2021, I started really thinking, all right, where do I see my life in 5 years? What do I want to be doing in 10 years? I have this skill, I have these people that trust me. What do I think is going to happen here in the next couple of years with the way things are going? So I started analyzing it, man. And, as much as I had learned, I was able to kind of, see the village through the fog kind of thing. And started to see like, hey, I could do the paperwork, which I learned how to do, on YouTube and through books, just like I'm telling you, and started doing all the paperwork to get the business license, and, and talked to my 2 business partners and said, hey guys, I'm thinking about moving. I'd love for you guys to come move with me and open up this something. And, they said that they agreed and wanted to do it. And so, it started with just 3 of us, and we moved down here in 2021. Made the jump, left our corporate jobs, and 2022 wasn't very friendly in terms of the real estate mortgage market because the rate environment was increasing the whole year.
Crazy,
But we were able to claw and scratch our way through and make a living and support our families, which I'm super grateful for. And now I feel like there's some light at the end of the tunnel, especially where we live in Wilmington in North Carolina. There's a lot of people moving here. So, I'm very forward thinking in terms of like, I think, we made the right move. It was a gamble, and it did keep me up a lot of nights in the beginning, but it's a lot of hard work and perseverance at the end of the day.
No, it is, man. And did you ever see yourself starting like a team when you started out? And you were a good salesperson, things are going good, you get a few fatties, you deposit it. Was it when they kind of moved to the new branch and you were being asked to make some higher level decisions, or how did that happen? Have you always had that vision, I'm going to start my own, or how did that naturally come about?
I think I was just kind of led by example. And so when I was one of the producers at the new company, then they sat people beside me so they could learn under me. And, they just, they wanted to keep doing that with 2 to 3 to 4 LOs per month.
Oh, wow.
So,
you started training.
I was training and through experience. I was still managing my business while helping them kind of pick up theirs. So I was given a lot more responsibility, with what that was, and I handled it as best as I could, and they appreciated it and they treated me well, and that's part of the reason some of the guys came and joined me, because they trusted that I knew what I was doing. And so that was a big part of it too, because I could have said, hey, I'm going to do this, and everybody said, well, go do it on your own.
Good luck.
And but that's not what happened. And now we have close to 10 licensed sponsored, and and we're doing loans in 7 states. So
Wow.
it's been a good progression.
Yeah.
But there's still a long way to go.
Well, I mean, you've been a long way too. I think that sometimes we, as entrepreneurs, we don't pat ourselves on the back for getting as far as we have, especially in the environment with what we've overcome and stuff. And I think it's amazing that your progression is just insane, moving fast. How was that transition to becoming where the transition from salesperson to leader and management? Sounds like it was somewhat gradual, because you kind of started teaching a little bit here and there and there. But how did you strike that balance? And did you like that the administrative aspect, like the leadership, the management kind of aspect, or did that come naturally to you? Did you have to mentor in that as well?
Man, that is a great question. It's still something that I'm probably working at getting better with, is the whole management piece, because, being a salesperson, you're typically only concerned about what you've got going on, how you're producing and how you're taking care of your clients. Well, now that I have extra people, there's more questions coming to my way that I have to make sure they feel the support is there. So, having to allocate my time, developing a good routine so I can help, still keep educating, still be there to answer questions. And, I think it's still a big part of my learning curve, because I'm still getting better at it in terms of just being a better manager, better leader, and, setting the right example at the same time in terms of sales. Yeah. Yeah. So it is a lot. It's a heavy hat to wear, but, I get to do it with some of my best friends, and that's the beauty of it.
That is awesome. And I've met the guys in your office, and you guys got a really cool culture. It's a great vibe, and it's always really good to work with guys that you hang with and get beers with after work and stuff. But at the same time, sometimes that can be also stressful too. Whenever there's a big speed bump in the road, and that's one thing I want to ask you about, not specifically about like your guys, but in your entrepreneurship journey, can you remember what would be the hardest, most difficult thing? One of the toughest, elements of it. Because with this podcast, I hear so many people that just talk about the good stuff all the time. This is like, I made so much money. It's just so simple. And there's so many people that sell courses and stuff like that. I really want to pull back the veil and say, you can do it, but here's what you got to do. Can you think of any times in your life or career where back up against the wall, or maybe there's a big mistake, or that cost you a lot of money?
100%.
Do you have anything?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, there's tons of setbacks, and like you were saying, you fail forward per se. Every time you fail, you learn something, so you don't do it again in the future. And more than likely, you're probably going to do it again, but then after that time, you're going to learn. Yeah. And so dude, you fail forward. My partners, we're all individuals. We might not agree on something all the time, and because we're friends, it makes it difficult to work with your friends sometimes. But at the end of the day, you got the same common goal. So, you got to keep a level head. I really think that's a big, important part, have some perspective. It's not all black and white. And so, I can think about times like that, with the market being the way that it has the past year, it's nothing that we could control. We don't control if the Fed announces that rates are going to go up 4% in less than 12 months, and they think that that's going to fix inflation. It really hasn't. So, we're seeing it play out, and, but like I said, the light at the end of the tunnel is I believe in the team. I believe in the market that we're in terms of where we're at location. And, I couldn't be happier to kind of, be in the position that I'm in. Yeah.
There's so many. It's one of those things where we have challenges like every day. And I think I've just gotten better at letting it roll off. You touched on one thing. I remember one thing that was really hard for me to adjust to when I got into sales was the peaks and valleys, and not being so incredibly down on myself when I would maybe lose a sale, or a deal fell apart, or the environment was bad, out of season or something. Because there's times when, like, as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, business owner, you can work your absolute tail off and not make any money, or you can barely do any work and just meet the right person at the right time and crush it, and then have this false sense of, how good you are. And I think that plays out, and it's so important to keep, and the word you use, perspective, because if you go back to, I remember W-2 life, I had a bad day at work, shake it off, man, it sucks. Still getting paid next week, and because it was kind of the average, we know that. But then now in sales, I have a bad day, and if I saw the chance for one of those fatty checks evaporate in front of me, I was like, oh man, that hurts.
Bigger gut punch.
Oh my gosh, big gut punch. Is there a big deal that you lost or something like that one that you can remember?
100%. I mean, when you're doing, it's in the mortgage world, you're doing, roughly 100 to 200 transactions a year, depending on, where you're doing them and what you're doing. So there's always going to be something like that where somebody lied to you, or you might not have had the right information about the property, and so you get down to closing and you realize, oh, hey, they actually aren't going to be able to do this, and they might have lied to you, or and then you realize, like, hey, I waste all this time and this effort, and and do that. But that being said, those are one-offs a lot of times. Usually you're doing your due diligence on the front end to make sure this doesn't happen, and that's part of learning. So that might happen to me early on in my career, where I might sniff it out now before it gets to that point.
Right.
And so you learn. And then also, like you were saying, you might meet somebody one day and it becomes a deal, or you might work a whole month and it fall apart. And that's why one of my favorite books that I read early on was The Power of Consistency. Okay. And if you're meeting every single person and you're treating them the same way consistently through your routine and how you handle them, then the consistent part and your routine will take care of bringing the business in. And so, you might lose one here and there, but you might pick up three because you were consistent and you weren't sulking about it. Yeah.
That's,
it's a great book too. If you ever get a chance, it's called The Power of Consistency, and I highly advise everybody to kind of check it out.
All right. I'm definitely gonna buy that one. But it peaks and valleys. I mean, for sure in this business, and it's so incredibly important to keep perspective. Just have that mindset. You're right. Just to kind of let stuff roll off. And I had one of my friends in town, Reed Harris, who he'd be a good guest. I need to have him on the podcast. He told me that somebody told him, these old sales adages. He said, some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. Is what he sounds like. That's good.
That's a good one.
It's good because, and then you're going to put in a lot of
perspective.
Work. Yeah. Some will. I mean, some won't. So what? It doesn't matter because you touched on this earlier. You said you can only control your output. All right. So I want to talk about kind of the holistic nature of being a business owner and entrepreneur, because we were talking about being consistent and what allows you to be consistent. I've found with other entrepreneurs that most of the time the battle is not just proficiency at your job, but it's proficiency in your life that will set you up to bring that to the table. What do you do outside of work that helps keep your mindset set up so that you can be effective?
I would be a glutton for punishment if I didn't say I had an awesome partner and wife. Okay. That definitely helps. So, and that you got an awesome partner as well.
You're getting some brownie points right now, man.
Yeah, definitely. So, but she contains qualities that I don't necessarily possess, and it's like yin and yang sometimes, and but it works well together. So, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. Also, having the routine dialed in outside of work, doing the personal development stuff that you can do, like I was saying, podcasts, walking, exercising, being parts of groups and clubs that we're able to meet people and commingle, so it doesn't all have to be work related to kind of gain an edge per se.
And people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Exactly. And if you were only one-dimensional and you're just a mortgage guy and that's it, you're going to get some business, but you may not attract and be in community and rapport with those people because we're all humans.
Well, people want somebody that they can relate to. They want somebody that's not, just a order taker trying to figure out, what kind of AT&T service they're setting up.
Yeah.
And so, it's a different type of relationship sales that we do.
Yeah.
But outside of it, man, it really does help, to have a good routine and set goals, and then, map out the plan to hit those goals. I think that's the biggest opportunity that people miss, is they have these goals or visions of what they want their life to look like in 5 years, but they don't take the 30 minutes that it takes to write it down on a piece of paper and then plan backwards and say, hey, if I want to have a boat in 5 years, I need to have, X amount of dollars saved up. That means every year from here to now or here to then, I need to save X amount.
Okay.
And but just like pick a goal and then plan backwards.
Yeah, a reverse engineer. I love that. So I want to dive into that a little bit, because I want to know, what if you were going to do it all again and you were going to start Coastline Capital, you're starting at pretty much zero, but you have the knowledge you have now. Yeah. What would be your process? What would be like from the vision to literally the execution? And obviously this is a long question, but give me kind of the spark notes. Like, what would be like the checkpoints that you would hit, and how would you approach that if you were going to build it?
Yeah, I mean, if I was doing the same type of business again, I would focus a little bit more on, gaining more market share and, becoming a little bit more well-known in different markets with different, realtors, title companies, that kind of thing. I think, there's opportunity that we should have grown a little bit faster in terms of market share. But, in terms of how we budgeted and how we planned, I feel like we did a really good job with that. We didn't overspend, which I think a lot of people make the mistake of overspending and not budgeting properly. So, that's why you might see a little bit more pressure created. So, I think that knowing a few of those things would have helped, but you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So
you started like networking. Yeah,
I would have, but I definitely started by writing it out on a piece of paper. Yeah. And just said, hey, step one, create LLC. Yeah. And go to this website and then watch a YouTube video on, all right, step two, here it is, and then execute on that. Gotcha. So, I just think that you have to come ready with the end in mind, and then create a plan to get you there. Yeah,
absolutely. And what you said about working backwards is so incredibly true. And that's how I've reverse engineered pretty much everything in my life. Has always been, if I want it, if someone else has either has it or has done it, then I know it's possible. So now it's just, how hard do I have to work, and how much do I have to give up to do that? How uncomfortable am I willing to be? And when you sit down there and put it on paper, and you actually write down, start an LLC, do the research, then you go, am I willing to sit and learn and do something that's out of my comfort zone, something I've not been trained to do? I think, I think this is kind of the nature of maybe capitalism, or just kind of the nature of kind of how our kind of works. We're very rewarded for being very, very specialized in one area, because we trade services and stuff like that. But then when you're a business owner, you can't afford to be you can't afford to hire an accountant to set up your books, and hire a lawyer to set up your LLC and stuff like that. So let's transition, talk a little bit about just kind of what what's happening in the mortgage world today. This is kind of a lot of our users may or may not, our listeners may or may not be in the market to buy a house like that, but generally from a macro finance standpoint, what is kind of the climate right now in that space?
There's a good amount of uncertainty on the federal and banking level in terms of interest rates and the price of money here in the future. In a local market stance, we're very insulated in terms of the demand is still high for people to move here. So in terms of our markets, I don't really see very much of a slowdown for people moving and coming here. But in terms of the big, larger environment, banks are starting to feel the pressure of the increased rate hikes from the Fed, and the Fed is realizing that we're having a liquidity issue, and it's not necessarily the same housing issue that we had in 2008. So their inflation that they're trying to tame is not necessarily related to interest rates per se. It is a way to help tame inflation, But, they raised rates so drastically, that's why you can see a lot of these banks are in trouble right now because, they might have bought a long-term treasury or a long-term mortgage-backed security when rates were 2%.
Right.
And now the Fed funds rate is 4% and they're losing money on that. And so you see some of these banks starting to, close up shop or having to be bailed out by the Fed. And what that means is the Fed's having to print more money. And, when the Fed prints more money, that devalues the American dollar. So they might tell you the taxpayer's not paying for it, but the taxpayer is certainly paying for it. Every time you go to the grocery store, you'll be able to see that. So they got a big problem that they got to answer. And, solutions like real estate, solutions like gold, solutions like Bitcoin are all safe harbor assets that are less easily manipulated than the dollar that's sitting in your bank account, and stocks to some extent. So people really need to start thinking about where they're putting their money. What is money? There's a brief description is a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. So those are the three characteristics of money. And once you sum it down to those three, you'll start to realize, all right, which of these assets classes has all three of these? And again, that's a store of value, a medium of exchange, and a unit of account. So
that's great. I've never heard that.
Oh my God. So it's I'm a big proponent of money and finance. So I tell my friends and my family all the time, like, hey, I've done a lot of research and, I don't believe that the Fed and the government is doing what's right by the people in terms of our monetary policy. So, we'll see kind of what happens as it shakes out. But, in terms of my market and what I do, I still am such a big proponent of real estate. There's less and less land available and more people. So, the demand's still high and the supply is shrinking.
That's the truth. And I think that understanding of the macroeconomy is just finance and money in general, man. Just bringing awareness to what it is and how it affects you, and kind of redefining. I mean, you just brought a new definition to me. I've always thought at this point, day and age, I don't carry physical cash. I mean, anywhere.
No one does, really.
And it's like, well, then what is money? All it is promises, really. It's like, I will promise my bank's going to send you this, then when you give me that, and then they're going to settle up, the next couple of days, and then everything happens kind of on that bigger scale.
Yeah, money's already somewhat of a digital ledger. You just check your bank account on your app on your phone. If you want that money in cash, you got to go to your bank and pull it out. But most likely, you're just going to go swipe your credit card. Chase is going to pay that Starbucks coffee for you, and a promise that you're going to pay them back when the credit card bill's due. And so Chase is prepaying that coffee for you. That merchant's paying 3% to Chase for the use of the swipe. And the customer's paying for it all. And so, money is already on an electronic ledger, and, the fact that the Fed can just click a button and then there's another zero, people don't realize what that does to the money that's sitting in their account because it's just getting devalued. So, it's very interesting. It's something that I really believe that kids should learn in middle school and high school. It's something that needs to be taught, and, but that's a whole other topic.
That's a whole other podcast on that topic alone. But tell me about how do you stay up to date with the finance world? What are kind of your sources of either content or information, your news? Kind of where do you like to hear this so that you can stay up to speed and take in that info?
I mean, you really got, especially this day and age, you got to get your information from multiple sources, and then you as the individual have to decipher what this information means, because it could be credible and it couldn't be. So, news sources that everybody sees, on TV or online, CNBC, CNN, Fox News, BBC News. You really need to get your news from multiple sources. I obviously use Twitter and Instagram and other things to kind of follow that. And, the good thing about those is you get news in real time. As people post it, you get to see it. And technology has made journalism a lot faster than, where in the previous years you had to wait till you got the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal, if you look at it right now, it's a couple days behind than what you can get online. So information technology is evolving, and the ease of information is readily available.
Yeah. So diversify your sources. Apply critical thinking as
100%.
Always, and I think a certain level of immersion too. Like once you, social media for me, it's been really helpful when I want to learn about a topic. If I just start searching those hashtags, start searching those influencers in those space, then all of a sudden, instead of what I call doom scrolling, where you're just taking in content for entertainment, I started to replace some of that with just learning. And then the cool thing that happened is when you control your content, you control you kind of control how you feel about a subject because you're gaining knowledge about it, and you're able
your input's better.
Your input's better, and you're able to just say, well, this person said this. Well, this person said it differently. It's like, why do I agree with that? Or what do they have to say about it? And then you
decipher your truth. You be like, y'all's truth is X and Y, and then my truth is Z, and it's somewhere in the middle. And
I've known, and one thing that I've found to be true is that I feel like awareness brings confidence. Awareness brings mastery and interest. I'm going to back this up. I want to say this right. When I'm aware of something, it makes me interested in that subject. When I'm interested in that subject, it makes me master that subject. When I master that subject, it brings confidence. So it's like awareness to interest to mastery to confidence. It's kind of like where it goes through. So you got to start by bringing awareness first. You don't just start confident.
It's the learning process. I mean, about like learning anything new. And, you got to dedicate the time to it. And some things take more time than others. And that's all right, but it doesn't mean give up. So, and that's what a lot of people do now is they give up before they master it, and they're only half full. And, and so they don't feel confident delivering the half full info they got.
Confidence is key. And I want to talk about something specific in the finance world that happened this week, just because it's such big news, and every entrepreneur needs to kind of get an idea about this, and I want to hear kind of your take on it too. But my understanding is that the 16th largest bank in the U.S., Silicon Valley Bank, there was a run on the bank, and they had a liquidity issue. They were trying to panic sell and trying to panic raise capital. Everyone pulled their money, and the bank collapsed overnight. And then there's this big, we don't have to get into this; it's a whole other topic. Big conversation about FDIC insurance and the limits, because I understand like 97% of the assets were over that limit, and there's a bunch of businesses that run on that. What what do you think as an entrepreneur? What do you think you should know about that? How do you think that affects someone that's starting a small business?
From the decision that the Fed made to, quote unquote, bail them out, basically they insured the deposits of everybody in that bank. So whether you had $250,000 or, $250 million, you got insured your money that was deposited in that bank, because the Fed knew on the other end of it, not stepping in to bail them out, that the tech companies and the other entrepreneurship that's going on in the U.S. that are being, fed by that bank, if they went out of business and they can't meet their payroll, well, how many employees does that mean that are going to be jobless now, right? So, the Fed is in a tough spot because they either had to decide that we either have to bail them out and make sure these jobs stay, or we let them suffer and then see if there's another bank that maybe falls out after that. So you signed us all the same thing for Signature Bank. They took a big hit and they had to bail them out too. So, you kind of see this contagion going on in the banking system, especially the regional banks, where you see people starting to get a little bit weary, but it's really all due to the Fed raising the rates so quickly, because people couldn't hedge their risk with the assets and the treasuries and mortgage-backed securities they bought in the previous years. So, it's a really interesting situation that, for people looking to get educated on it, it just shows you that, hey, the Fed is going to protect your money where they originally told you $250K was the limit. It's actually higher than that, because they're showing you that, hey, they are going to insure you for even more money. Now, if that's the case in the future, we'll see. But, the Fed doesn't want to lose credibility in the banking system where people completely, go and there's there's a massive bank run and and there's a liquidity crisis. So I'm hopeful that this is just the tip of the ice, or this is just the little bit that they're going to get out of their system, and they kind of pivot on rates and start bringing the rates back down, which is what I think that they should do.
Yeah.
But they're just stuck between a rock and a hard place with inflation being high and there being a liquidity crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough. It's. I'm very interested. I'm following that obviously pretty closely.
Yeah.
And how do you think that if you're how do you think that this news and this environment of the economy plays into the confidence of someone that's looking to start a small business?
Oh, I mean, it definitely plays into it. You have you sometimes when you start a small business, you have to go take a small business loan, and if that loan you're taking is at a higher rate than it was 2 or 3 years ago, that's more risk for you and your business to make up.
Yeah.
So it affects it not only financially, but market conditions too. Is you have inflation at all-time high, which means people have tighter budgets and higher credit card debt. So there's not going to be as many customers and people spending as much money on goods or services unless it's a necessity.
Right.
So, it's hard to start a business that's not a necessity in times like this because you can't assure yourself of sales. And so, it's a tough situation for anybody starting a business right now. And, that's why I think that there's a pivot coming, and, and the country's going to open back up here in the next year or two. And, we're going to be back to it. But there's just a lack of confidence in the system right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's important to be aware of, not to harp on and let that affect your mindset. Because there's so much
control.
We can only worry about things we can control. And that's what would really, I would want it to be my message to, anybody listening that's just curious about this is, as serious as all of that is, and it is, what's affecting you right now? What do you have control over tomorrow that you can do and still bring value and create value? Because at the end of the day, I feel like if you are creating value for others, you will be valuable in one sense of the word or the other. You might not get paid as much here in this iteration of the economy or whatever, and even in for real estate agents, there's a lot of downward pressure on commissions right now, and our commissions are getting less and less and less. Well, I mean, if I want to maintain a lot, I just got to sell more, and what I got to do, it's how are we going to adjust and change in that environment. Yeah, in
an environment like this, the cream really rises to the top. So you see some people get weeded out of the business, and that's part of capitalism, and then some people step up in times like this. Yeah. So, like I said, you control your controllables, and you stay consistent, and you let the cards land where they're going to land, but you do all you can to make an impression. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely nailed it. I know we could probably talk about the SVB Bank and all the time stuff, and for a while it's fascinating stuff, but I want to transition a little bit to, just to kind of wrap up, get to the kind of conclusion of our show. We are in Wilmington. Oh, yeah. What do you like about Wilmington, man? Oh my God! What brought you here in the first place? What's not to like about Wilmington? Oh my God! Yeah. So Coastline's office is down on Wrightsville, so that's a pretty tough spot to go work out. It's every day. His office is incredible. So walk over to the beach, walk the loop, do some personal development, good food in Wilmington. Awesome market here. I really think that for such a small, mid-sized coastal town that, we're still a little bit of a hidden gem. And so getting out of a bigger city like Charlotte, it's nice to get down here a little bit slower pace in terms of, the corporate world. And, it's just a good opportunity, man. I love it. And my parents are close by up in Topsail, nice. So I get to spend time with family. That's good. And, at the end of the day, that's really the most important thing, dude. Yeah. So just making a difference out here like you. Yeah. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, dog. Wilmington's great. I think it's been an amazing city. I think it's full of a lot of really amazing people and some great entrepreneurs here. That I have a long list of people that I want to sit here and interview. 100%. Like yourself, man.
you plugged a couple books. You know, do you have any must read, must take in content recommendations for anyone as we get to the end?
I mean, just there's all types of podcasts, personal development podcasts. I'd give a shout out. Ed Milet does a great job with personal development. If you're interested in Bitcoin or alternative assets, I would look at Pompliano, the Pomp podcast, and or What Bitcoin Did. If you're reading books, you know, start with The Miracle Morning. If you're really working on your routine, The Power of Consistency, 10X, and Think Rich and or Think and Grow Rich for Robert.
Napoleon Hill.
Kiyosaki was Think and Grow Rich, I think. And he's also did Rich Dad Poor Dad. But maybe it is. I can't remember. But
somebody will Google it.
I've read those way back when. But yeah, man. And you know, for anybody looking at real estate in a bunch of different states, you know, hit up Coastline Capital Mortgage. We not only do just traditional loans, but also do bank statement, non-QM, construction, home equity lines of credit. So anybody with financing needs, please give us a call.
Yeah, if you're listening to this show and you have real estate needs, you've got the dream team sitting right here in front of you.
No doubt. It would be
finance it.
Hell of a time and a great experience.
I'm sure. Yeah, one of you guys make it happen. I need someone to buy a house, and even if you're out of state, give this guy a call. He can still help you out.
No doubt.
As well.
And if you're local, hit my man up. He'll make it a fun experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add or bring to the table, man?
I appreciate you having me. I know we talked a long time, so I'm interested to see kind of how it turns out, and I'm excited for you, man. I think this is a really cool venture that you're doing, and I appreciate you having me. So it's great for both of us, I think.
I'm just interviewing people that are crushing it, and I get to sit here and learn. That's the best part. Like I get to be the front row seat. I'm just asking the questions that I think that people would want to know, and it's awesome to hear from you, man.
It's just the beginning, and like I said, we'll do this a couple times and have fun with it. Dude. And keep playing ball.
Oh, Clay. Man, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. Guys, if you want to find Clay, where can people find you online?
Instagram,
get in contact with you?
Instagram's huge, or coastlinecapitalmortgage.com. Instagram is Coastline Capital MTG. Okay. And then, Clay Boroughs, you can find me, or you can find me on Twitter. And we're obviously located here on Wrightsville, so you can find us.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for being a guest on the third episode of the podcast. I'll let you know when this all comes out, and thank you guys for listening. If you got a lot from this show, please drop a comment. Let us know if Clay or I said anything that really resonated with you. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And thank you for continuing to listen and support the Wilmington Entrepreneur Podcast. If you have someone that you think would be good to get on this show, let me know. I'll have them on as well. Mm-hmm. And man, let's get back out on the basketball court here soon. It's getting warm. Or maybe I should take you to the skating rink to see if you can still do some tricks on those skates.
I can still do it. So we'll test these hamstrings out.
It's like riding a bike, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll see.